The shuttle approached the massive station that floated in the darkness of space like a crystal palace among the stars. Giwan Park sat in the passenger seat, watching through the window as the structure grew larger with each passing moment. She had been a diplomat for 20 years, had negotiated trade deals with colony governors, and settled disputes between mining corporations. But nothing in her career had prepared her for this moment. This was humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Assembly. The ancient coalition that had ruled known space for 10,000 years, Admiral Hajin Choi sat beside her. His military uniform crisp and perfect despite the long journey from Earth. He leaned forward and pointed at the station. "Look at the size of it. That thing could hold 1,000,000 people, easily." Jawan nodded but said nothing. She was reviewing the cultural briefing one more time, memorizing the proper ways to address each species on the council. The Thulvari were crystalline beings who valued directness. The Vorn were reptilian warriors who respected strength. The Pelthians were aquatic creatures who communicated partially through color changes in their skin. 7 species in total, each ancient beyond human comprehension, each with technology that made Earth's best inventions look like children's toys. The shuttle docked with a gentle thump. A mechanical voice announced their arrival in several languages, including English. When the airlock opened, Jiwan and Hajin were greeted by a Pelthian attendant whose skin shifted through shades of blue and green. "Welcome, humans," the Pelthian said through a translator device. "The council awaits you in the Grand Chamber. Please follow me." They walked through corridors that seemed to be made of living metal, walls that shifted and changed to accommodate different species. They passed dozens of aliens, some walking on legs, others floating, still others moving in ways Juan could not quite understand. The diversity was overwhelming. After 15 minutes of walking, they reached a massive door that opened silently. The grand chamber was circular and enormous. 7 thrones sat arranged in a semicircle, each designed for a different species. The room was already full of observers from various worlds, all watching as the 2 humans entered. Jiwan felt hundreds of eyes on her, but she kept her back straight and her face calm. Hajin walked beside her, his hand resting casually near his sidearm. Though Jiwan hoped he would not need it, a being of pure crystal sat on the central throne, towering at least 3 meters tall. Light refracted through its body, creating rainbow patterns on the floor. This was Thulvan, the High Chancellor of the Galactic Assembly. When it spoke, its voice resonated like wind chimes in a storm. "Humans, your species has been observed since you developed faster-than-light travel. You have spread to 50 star systems in only 300 years. This is impressive for such a young race." Juan bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, High Chancellor. Humanity is honored to finally meet the great civilizations of the galaxy. We hope to learn from your wisdom and experience." Thulvan's crystalline body seemed to pulse with light. "Yes, there is much you must learn, and the first lesson begins today." The Chancellor gestured with one long, glittering arm, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a document written in dozens of languages, including English. "This is the Treaty of Membership. All species in known space must sign it. As of today, you are required to do the same." Guan stepped forward to read the hologram. Her eyes scanned the text quickly, and with each line her heart sank a little deeper. The treaty was not what she had expected. It was not an agreement between equals. It was a demand, an ultimatum. 40%, she said quietly. "You want 40% of all our resources. 40% of our economic output. Every year, forever." "Correct," Thulvan said, as if discussing the weather. "This is standard for all member species. It is the price of peace and prosperity in the galaxy." Chan spoke for the first time, his voice hard. "And what do we get in return for this tribute?" One of the other council members, a Vorn with scales like burnished copper, laughed. It was a harsh, rattling sound. "You get to live human. You get the protection of the Assembly. No one will invade your worlds. No one will destroy your colonies. Is that not worth the price?" Guan felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced it down. She needed to stay calm. "High Chancellor, this seems less like membership and more like subjugation. We would be paying for the privilege of existing." Thulvan's body flashed with bright light, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. You are new to the galaxy, human. You do not understand how things work here. This system has maintained peace for 10,000 years. Every species pays tribute. Every species benefits. It is the natural order. What if we refuse? Hajin asked. His hand had moved closer to his weapon. The entire chamber fell silent. Even the observers stopped their quiet conversations. The Vorn Council member leaned forward on his throne, his eyes gleaming. No one refuses the assembly. Not if they wish to survive. Juan looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her. She saw fear in some of their eyes. Fear and resignation. These species had accepted this system because they had no choice. They paid tribute because the alternative was destruction. But Jiwan was not ready to accept that. Not yet. Hi, Chancellor, she said carefully. I do not have the authority to sign such a treaty on behalf of humanity. I must bring this back to Earth's government for consideration. Surely you understand that such a significant decision requires proper deliberation. Thulvin was quiet for a long moment. The light refracting through his body seemed to slow and dim. Very well. You may return to your homeworld. You have 30 standard days to make your decision. If you do not sign the treaty by then, we will assume you are refusing membership, and the consequences of such a refusal will be severe. Economic sanctions at minimum, possibly military action if you prove difficult. 30 days, Guan repeated. We understand, and this meeting is concluded. You are dismissed. Jiwan and Hajan bowed and turned to leave. As they walked back through the massive chamber, Giwan could feel the eyes of every alien in the room following them. She heard whispers in languages she did not understand. When they finally reached the corridor outside, Hajin let out a long breath. That was a threat, he said quietly. Not an invitation. They want to control us. I know, Jiwan replied. They want to control everyone. That's their entire system. Fear and tribute. That's how they've maintained power for 10,000 years. They walked in silence back to their shuttle. When they were safely inside and the door had sealed behind them, Hajin turned to Juwan. What are we going to tell Earth? Guan looked out the window at the massive station, at the ships from 100 different worlds docked along its surface. She thought about humanity's colonies, about the families living on distant worlds, about the future her species might have among the stars. And she thought about the price the Assembly wanted them to pay for that future. We tell them the truth, she said finally. We tell them that the galaxy is not what we hoped it would be. And then we let them decide what kind of species we want to be. The shuttle undocked and began its journey back toward human space. As the station grew smaller behind them, Hajin smiled grimly. They have no idea what they just started. The emergency session began at midnight Geneva time, but nobody complained about the hour. Representatives from every major colony and territory appeared as holograms around the circular table in the United Earth Council chamber. Guan Park stood at the center podium, exhausted from her journey, but forcing herself to remain alert. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the treaty document the Assembly had presented.
Prime Minister Min Ho Kong called the session to order.
He was a thin man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Ambassador Park has returned from the Galactic Assembly with urgent news. I ask that everyone listen carefully and save questions for after her presentation. Juwan cleared her throat and began. She told them everything. The massive station. The 7 ancient species. The arrogant Chancellor Thulvin. And most importantly, the demand for tribute. When she finished, the chamber erupted with voices. Every representative tried to speak at once. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some seemed resigned to accepting the Assembly's terms. Minho raised his hand for silence. Please. One at a time. Governor Han, you have the floor. Yunji Han's hologram flickered slightly. She was transmitting from the colony world of New Busan on the outer rim of human space. This is madness. Our colonies are barely self-sufficient. We have just started building schools and hospitals. If we give 40% of everything to some distant council, our people will starve. Children will go hungry. We cannot accept this. A representative from Mars spoke next. But what choice do we have? They threaten military action. We've seen recordings of assembly ships. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. If they decide to destroy us, we cannot stop them. Perhaps we should negotiate, suggested another voice. A hologram from the Jupiter colonies. Maybe we can get them to lower the percentage. 20% instead of 40%. We could survive that. Unilee, Earth's chief economic advisor, stood up. She was young for her position, only 35, but brilliant. She tapped her tablet, and new data appeared on the screen. I have run the numbers on every possible scenario. If we pay 40%, our economy collapses within 10 years. Colonies fail. Trade routes shut down. Millions lose their jobs. If we pay 20%, we survive, but we never grow. We become permanently stuck at our current level of development. And that is assuming the assembly never raises the tribute amount, which historically they do every few centuries. The chamber fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Minho leaned forward in his chair. So paying tribute is not sustainable. What are our other options? Daeho Kim stood from his seat. He was the head of military intelligence, a stern man who rarely spoke in these meetings. I have been studying the assembly for the past 3 years, ever since we first detected their ships. I need to share what we have learned. He uploaded his own data to the screen. The assembly has not fought a real war in 6,000 years. Their last conflict was against a species called the Korath, who refused tribute and were destroyed. Since then, every species has simply accepted their terms. The assembly maintains a large fleet, yes, but they use it only for intimidation. Their tactics are outdated. Their ships are powerful but slow. Their crews have no combat experience. Admiral Ha-Jin Choi nodded. I can confirm this. During our visit to their station, I observed their security forces. They move like ceremonial guards, not soldiers. They have forgotten how to fight. Are you suggesting we go to war with them? Asked a representative from Earth's Asian Union. Oh, that seems insane. I am suggesting, Daeho said carefully, that we are not as helpless as they want us to believe. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We understand conflict. We understand tactics and strategy and adaptation. They do not. They only understand fear and submission. Yunji Han spoke again from New Busan. My people came to the Outer Rim to escape control from Earth. We wanted freedom to build our own lives. I will not tell them they must now submit to some alien council that wants to take half of everything we have worked for. I would rather fight. Many would die, said the Mars representative quietly. Many will die either way, Yunji replied. At least if we fight, we die free. The arguments continued for hours. Some advocated compliance, pointing to the assembly's overwhelming technological advantage. Others demanded resistance, unwilling to surrender humanity's future to alien control. Minho listened to all of them, his face revealing nothing. Finally, as dawn approached in Geneva, he raised his hand for silence one last time. I have heard everyone's concerns. Both sides have valid points. This is perhaps the most important decision humanity has ever faced. It will determine not just our future, but the kind of species we choose to be. He paused, looking around the chamber at all the holographic faces. So I am calling for a vote. All those in favor of signing the Assembly's treaty and paying tribute, indicate now. Guan watched as the votes were tallied on the screen. 3 representatives voted yes. Only 3 out of 47. The rest sat in silence. And all those in favor of refusing the Assembly's terms? This time, every other hand went up. 44 votes for refusal. The decision was nearly unanimous. Minho nodded slowly. Then it is decided. Humanity will not pay tribute. We will not bow to threats. We will not surrender our freedom for the promise of safety. He looked directly at Juan. Ambassador Park, you will deliver our response to the Assembly. Tell them that Earth and all her colonies stand united in this decision. Juan felt her heart racing. Prime Minister, they will not accept this easily. There will be consequences, Minho said, which is why Admiral Choi will begin preparations immediately. Every ship in our fleet should be ready for deployment. Every colony should strengthen its defenses. We hope for peace, but we prepare for war. The meeting adjourned as the sun rose over Geneva. Giwan walked out of the chamber with Hajin beside her. "Are we doing the right thing?" she asked quietly. Hajin was quiet for a moment. "I have spent my entire life in the military. I have studied every war humanity has ever fought, and I have learned one thing. Freedom cannot be bought with submission. Either we are free or we are slaves. There is no middle ground." 3 days later, Giwan stood in the communications center, preparing to send her message to the assembly. Technicians checked the equipment one final time. The transmission would be broadcast not just to the council, but to every world in assembly space. Minho had insisted on that. He wanted everyone to hear humanity's response. "We are ready, Ambassador," said one of the technicians. Jiwan took a deep breath and faced the camera. The red light came on, indicating she was being recorded. "Hi, Chancellor Thulvin, and members of the Galactic Assembly. I am Ambassador Jiwan Park, representing the United Earth Council and all human colonies. I have returned with our response to your treaty proposal." She paused, making sure her words were clear and strong. "The answer is no. Humanity will not pay tribute. We will not surrender 40% of our resources for the privilege of existing. We will not accept a system built on fear and subjugation. We came to the stars seeking friendship and cooperation among equals. If the Assembly cannot offer that, then we have no interest in membership." She stopped the recording. The technician looked at her with wide eyes. "Should I transmit it?" "Yes," Giwan said. "Send it now." The message was sent across space at faster-than-light speeds. Within hours, it would reach the assembly station. Within days, every species in the galaxy would know that humanity had done the impossible. They had said no. G1 returned to her quarters and sat in the darkness, wondering what would come next. She thought about Yunjihan's words. "We die free." She hoped it would not come to that. But if it did, at least humanity would face their fate standing upright, not on their knees. Somewhere in the distance, alarms began to sound. Ships were launching from orbital docks. Crews were being called to their stations. The wait was over. Now they would see if courage alone could stand against an empire 10,000 years old. The transmission reached the assembly station during what the Thulvari considered their meditation cycle. Thulvin had been resting in his crystalline chamber when the alert came through, an urgent message from the humans. He activated the hologram with a thought, expecting to see Ambassador Park informing him of Earth's submission. Instead, he heard words that no species had spoken in 6,000 years. The answer is no. Thulvin's crystalline body flared with light so bright it hurt to look at. He replayed the message 3 times, certain he had misunderstood, but the words remained the same. Humanity was refusing. They were actually refusing the Assembly's authority. Within the hour, entire council had assembled in the Grand Chamber. The mood was chaos. The Vorn representative was shouting about immediate military action. The Pelthian was changing colors so rapidly it looked like a strobe light. Only the Korath representative, a being of pure energy contained in a sphere, remained calm. "This is unprecedented," said the Vorn. "No species has refused tribute in millennia. If we allow this, others will follow their example. Our entire system will collapse." Thulvin tried to restore order. "The humans are young and foolish. They do not understand the reality of their situation. We will send a fleet to their space, a demonstration of our power. When they see our ships, they will reconsider." But even as he said it, Thulvin felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Doubt. The humans had not sounded afraid in their message. They had sounded determined, confident, as if they knew something he did not. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On a dozen worlds, in 100 space stations, alien species gathered around displays showing the human transmission. Many could not believe what they were hearing. Some laughed, certain the humans would be crushed within days. But others watched with different eyes. On the mining world of Telkar 7, a species called the Vren gathered in secret. They had been paying tribute to the Assembly for 3,000 years, had watched their civilization slowly decay under the weight of constant taxes. Their elder, A ancient Vren named Kohler replayed the human message for his people. They said no, he whispered. After all these years, someone finally said no. They will be destroyed, said a younger Vren. The assembly will make an example of them, perhaps Kohler replied. Or perhaps they will succeed. And if they do, maybe we can find our courage too. Similar conversations were happening on worlds across the galaxy. Species that had long ago accepted their fate as tribute payers suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. The humans had planted a seed. It was growing in the darkness, at a human research station orbiting a dead star. Scientist Bowman Yu was analyzing data that had nothing to do with the political crisis. She was studying ancient civilizations, trying to understand how the assembly had risen to power. Her research had been dry and academic until now. But as news of humanity's refusal spread, she looked at her findings with fresh eyes. She called her supervisor immediately. Sir, you need to see this. I've been going through archaeological records from the Korath homeworld. They were the last species to refuse the assembly, about 6,000 years ago. I know the history, Bowman. They were destroyed. Made an example of. That's what the assembly says. But I found transmissions from that time period buried in old data archives. The Korath were not destroyed in battle. They surrendered after only one skirmish. But here is what is interesting. The Assembly's fleet took massive damage in that engagement. They won, but barely. And they have never fought another war since. Her supervisor was quiet for a long moment. You are saying the Assembly is not as invincible as they claim? I am saying they are afraid to fight. They maintain power through fear and intimidation. But actual warfare? They avoid it at all costs, because they know they might lose. This information was immediately transmitted to Earth and forwarded to Admiral Hajin Choi. When he read the report, he smiled. His instincts had been correct. The assembly was a paper tiger, dangerous if you believed the threat, but vulnerable if you called their bluff. But not everyone was smiling. On New Busan, Governor Yoon Han watched as sensors detected incoming ships. Lots of them. The assembly had sent their Vorn enforcers, a fleet of 30 warships heading straight for the colony. She immediately contacted Captain Sungri Nam, commander of the destroyer HSS Indomitable, currently on patrol near New Busan. Captain, we have incoming hostiles. Assembly forces. Can you intercept? Sungri was young for his rank, only 32, but he had proven himself in skirmishes against pirates and smugglers. Governor, I have 1 destroyer and 4 corvettes. They have 30 capital ships. The numbers are not good. I know the numbers, Captain. But if you withdraw, they will reach the colony unopposed. 15,000 civilians live here. Families, children. Sungri looked at his crew. His navigator, Hiran Shin, met his eyes and nodded. She was brilliant with ship systems, could make their old destroyer do things the designers never imagined. His weapons officer, Junho Park, was already running firing solutions. His entire crew was ready. Understood, Governor? We will hold the line. The human ships moved to intercept the Vorn fleet in the outer system, near a dense asteroid field. It was the only tactical advantage they had. Sungri ordered his ships to use the asteroids for cover. To stay mobile and avoid direct confrontation with the larger Vorn vessels, the Vorn commander, a massive reptilian named Krask, had fought pirates and raiders before but never a military force. Still, he was not concerned. These humans had only 5 small ships. His fleet could destroy them with a single volley. He opened a communication channel. Human vessels, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. This system is now under Assembly authority. Resistance will be met with lethal force. Sungri replied calmly, This is human space, defended by human ships. You are the ones who need to withdraw. Krask laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You have 5 ships. I have 30. You cannot win. Maybe not, Sungri admitted. But we can make you pay for every meter of space. And everyone in the galaxy is watching this fight. Are you ready for the whole galaxy to see what happens when the mighty assembly attacks a colony of civilians? For a moment, Krask hesitated. The human was right. This confrontation was being broadcast across dozens of worlds. The Assembly's reputation depended on appearing strong, but just. If he destroyed a civilian colony, even in the name of enforcing tribute, it would look like butchery. But he had his orders. Thulvin had been clear. Make an example of the humans. Fire, Krask commanded. The Vorn ships opened up with their main weapons, massive energy beams designed to crack planets. But Sungri had already moved. The human ships scattered like leaves in wind, diving into the asteroid field. The Vorn weapons hit nothing but rock and ice. Turn fire, Sungri ordered. Target their engines and weapons. I want them disabled, not destroyed. We are not murderers. The human ships struck back with missiles and railguns, weapons that seemed primitive compared to the Vorn's energy beams. But they were accurate and precise. The first Vorn ship lost its main engine and began drifting. A second took damage to its weapons array. Krask could not believe what he was seeing. These tiny human ships were actually hurting his fleet. It was impossible. It was humiliating. All ships concentrate fire on the lead destroyer. I want it obliterated. 30 ships turned their weapons toward the Indomitable. Sungri saw the energy readings spike on his sensors and knew he had only seconds to live. But then Hiren did something impossible. She diverted all power from life support and engines directly into the shields, overloading them beyond their design limits. This will hold for maybe 10 seconds, she said. After that, we are done. The Vorn fired. The energy beams hit the Indomitable like the hammer of God. The shields held for 5 seconds. 6, 7. The ship shook like it was being torn apart. 8, 9. The shields failed and the hull began to melt, and then Admiral Hajin Choi arrived. His fleet had been holding position just outside the system, waiting for this exact moment. 20 human warships emerged from faster-than-light travel directly behind the Vorn fleet. Hajin had timed it perfectly. All ships, fire at will. The Vorn fleet was caught completely off guard. Half their ships were still focused on the Indomitable. The other half were trying to turn around to face this new threat. In the confusion, the human ships struck hard and fast. 3 Vorn vessels were disabled in the first volley. 2 more collided with each other, trying to maneuver. Krask realized with horror that he was losing. Not just the battle, but his fleet. His ships. His reputation. He had come here to crush the humans, and instead they were crushing him. Retreat, he ordered. All ships jumped to hyperspace immediately. The Vorn fleet fled, leaving 8 damaged ships behind. The humans made no attempt to pursue. They simply held their position and watched them go. On New Busan, people poured into the streets, cheering. They had been saved. The mighty assembly had attacked and been driven off by human courage and cunning. But more importantly, species across the galaxy had watched it happen. The assembly could be beaten. The humans had proven it. And now, on 100 worlds, people who had long forgotten the taste of freedom began to remember revolution was coming. Commander Krask returned to the assembly station in disgrace. His fleet had been damaged and humiliated by the humans. 8 of his ships had been captured or disabled. The rest had fled like frightened prey animals. Thulvin did not bother to hide his fury. You had 30 ships against 5? How did you lose? Krask lowered his head. The humans fight differently than any species we have encountered. They do not follow traditional battle formations. They use terrain. They adapt constantly. They took risks no sane commander would take. And when we thought we had them cornered, reinforcements arrived. They had planned the entire engagement like a trap. The other council members stirred in their seats. This was deeply troubling news. The Assembly's power had always rested on the belief that their military was invincible. If that belief crumbled, everything would fall apart. We must send a larger force, insisted the Vorn representative. 100 ships. 200. Enough to crush the humans completely. But the Koreth representative, the being of energy, spoke for the first time in months. And what happens if we send 200 ships and still lose? Our entire system is built on fear. If we show weakness again, every subjugated species will revolt. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach with the humans. Thulvin's crystalline body flashed with anger. You suggest we negotiate? Show them we can be defied without consequence? Never. We will gather our full military strength and end this rebellion once and for all. Orders went out across assembly space. Every military ship was recalled. Reserves were activated. Species that had not seen combat in centuries were suddenly told to prepare their forces. The assembly was mobilizing for total war. On Earth, victory at New Busan was celebrated, but military leaders knew it was just the beginning. Admiral Hajin Choi stood in the war room with Prime Minister Min Ho Kong and the other commanders, studying holographic maps of human space. They will come with everything they have, Hajin said. Our intelligence suggests they are gathering at least 500 ships, maybe more. We stopped 30 vessels with clever tactics, but 500? That will require something more. Minho studied the map carefully. What are our options? We cannot win a direct confrontation. They still have superior technology and numbers. But we have advantages they lack. Our crews are better trained. Our tactics are more flexible. And most importantly, we are fighting for our homes. They are fighting to maintain control. There is a difference in motivation. Dae-ho Kim, the intelligence chief, brought up new data. We have also been analyzing their fleet composition. Most of their ships are very old. Some date back thousands of years. They have not built new vessels or updated their designs in centuries. They rely on their energy shields and weapons being powerful enough to overwhelm any opponent. But those systems have weaknesses. A young officer named Bowman, you had joined the meeting as a civilian consultant? Her research on the assembly had proven valuable. I have been studying the Battle of Korath, the last time the assembly faced real resistance. The Korath focused on trying to match the assembly's firepower. They built bigger guns and stronger shields. But that played to the assembly's strengths. We need to do the opposite. Explain, Minho said. Bauman pulled up tactical data from the New Busan engagement. Look at what worked for Captain Songri. Speed, unpredictability, using the environment. The Vorn ships are powerful, but slow. Their energy weapons are devastating at close range, but take time to recharge. If we keep moving, keep changing our approach, we can wear them down. Hajin nodded slowly. Hit-and-run tactics. Guerrilla warfare in space. It will be exhausting for our crews, but it might work. We need more time to prepare, said another admiral. Can we delay their attack? Giwan Park spoke up. She had been quiet through most of the meeting, but now she had an idea. What if we force them to split their attention? The assembly controls hundreds of worlds. If multiple species revolt at the same time, they cannot focus all their forces on us. Minho looked at her. You want to encourage rebellion across the galaxy? We have already done that simply by resisting. Species are watching us. They are inspired by our courage. We just need to help that inspiration spread. I can reach out to resistance groups on other worlds. Provide them with information about the assembly's weaknesses. Coordinate timing. It was a bold plan, dangerous, but they were already at war. Being cautious would not save them now. Do it, Minho decided. Contact whoever you can. Let the galaxy know that humans are not alone in wanting freedom. Over the next 3 weeks, Giwan worked with resistance groups on 17 different worlds. Most were small organizations, people who had been quietly opposing the assembly for years. They shared information, coordinated plans, and prepared for simultaneous action. Meanwhile, the human military prepared for the coming battle. Every ship was upgraded with the best weapons and shields available. Crews trained constantly, running simulation after simulation. New tactics were developed and practiced. The asteroid field near New Busan became a training ground where human pilots learned to fly in ways that seemed impossible. Captain Nam was promoted to Commodore and given command of an entire squadron. His ship, the Indomitable, had been repaired and upgraded. His engineer Hiron Shin developed new techniques for managing power distribution that gave human ships an edge in combat. Finally, the assembly fleet arrived. They came out of hyperspace, at the edge of human territory. A massive armada that blotted out the stars. 543 ships in total, representing every military species in the assembly. It was the largest fleet assembled in 6,000 years, Thulvin himself commanded the fleet from a massive dreadnought at the center. He had decided to oversee the human subjugation personally. He wanted to watch as their resistance was crushed. He wanted to make sure every species in the galaxy understood what happened to those who defied the assembly. The human fleet waited for them near the colony of New Busan, only 80 ships in total. They looked tiny against the assembly armada. Thulvin opened a communication channel that would broadcast to both fleets and across the entire galaxy. Humans, this is your last chance to surrender. Accept the tribute system, and your species will be allowed to survive. Refuse, and we will destroy every colony, every ship, every trace of your existence. Choose now. There was silence for a long moment. Then Admiral Hajin Choi responded, "We made our choice when we said no the first time. That choice has not changed. If you want our freedom, you will have to take it from our cold, dead hands." Thulvin ended the transmission. All ships, attack formation. Destroy them. The assembly fleet moved forward in a traditional battle wall, 500 ships advancing in perfect synchronization. It should have been an overwhelming sight. But the human ships did not retreat. Instead, they scattered in dozens of different directions.
Now what are they doing?
Asked one of Thulvin's subordinates. They are breaking formation. That is tactically insane. But Hajin knew exactly what he was doing. The human ships dove into nearby asteroid fields, used planets and moons for cover, and attacked from unexpected angles. They never stayed still. They never engaged in direct combat for more than a few seconds. They hit and ran, over and over. Whittling away at the assembly fleet, the assembly ships tried to maintain their formation, but it became impossible. They were fighting in 3 dimensions across a massive space, and the humans were everywhere at once. Commodore Soongray led his squadron through the wreckage of a destroyed space station, using the debris as cover to ambush assembly cruisers. Each attack disabled or destroyed 1 or 2 ships. Then the human vessels vanished before retaliation could come. Hironshin's power management techniques proved devastating. Human ships would suddenly divert all power to weapons for a single massive salvo, then immediately switch everything to shields or engines. The assembly crews could not predict what the humans would do next because the humans themselves did not follow any predictable pattern. The battle raged for 6 hours. The assembly had more ships and more firepower, but they could not land decisive hits. The humans were too fast, too unpredictable. Frustration mounted among the assembly commanders. Then the news came that Thulvin had been dreading. Rebellions had started on 14 worlds simultaneously. Species that had been paying tribute for thousands of years had suddenly risen up, attacking assembly garrisons and supply depots. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. The humans had coordinated this, Chancellor said his communications officer. "We are receiving distress calls from across our territory. We need to send ships immediately." Thulvin faced an impossible choice. If he withdrew ships from the battle to deal with the rebellions, the humans might gain the upper hand here. But if he ignored the rebellions, they would spread. The system he had spent centuries maintaining was falling apart. "Admiral." Hajin saw the assembly fleet beginning to hesitate and knew this was his moment. "All ships, full assault. Hit them with everything we have." The human fleet stopped running and turned to attack. 80 ships against 500. But those 80 ships were crewed by people fighting for their survival, their families, their freedom. The assembly crews were fighting because they were ordered to. The difference showed. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Busan, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. The assembly had not collapsed overnight, but it was dying slowly, like a tree that had been cut at the roots. Every week brought news of another species refusing tribute, another world declaring independence. The system that had maintained order for 10,000 years was falling apart. Thulvin sat alone in his chamber on the assembly station, watching the reports come in. The Vren had stopped paying tribute entirely, and were now demanding reparations for 3,000 years of exploitation. The Pelthians had withdrawn their representative from the council and recalled all their ships. Even the Vorn, the Assembly's most loyal enforcers, were questioning whether the old ways could continue. He had tried everything to restore order. Threats, negotiations, shows of force, nothing worked. The species of the galaxy had tasted the possibility of freedom, and now they would not go back to chains. All because of the humans. Those young, primitive, impossible humans who had done what no one else dared to do. There was a knock at his chamber door. Thelvin was surprised. Few dared to disturb him these days. Enter. Giwan Park walked in, accompanied by 2 human guards. She looked different than when he had first met her. More confident, more certain of herself and her place in the galaxy. Ambassador Park, Thalvin said, his voice lacking its former power. Have you come to gloat over our downfall? Juan shook her head. I have come with a proposal. A way forward that might benefit everyone. Thalvin gestured for her to continue. He had nothing to lose by listening. The assembly is dying, Juan said bluntly. You know it. I know it. The entire galaxy knows it. You can either let it collapse into chaos, or you can help build something better. Something that serves everyone, not just the species in power. And what exactly are you proposing? Guan activated a hologram. It showed a document, carefully drafted and translated into dozens of languages. The Free Species Coalition, an alliance based on mutual cooperation, voluntary trade, and collective defense. No tribute. No forced membership. Just species working together because they choose to, not because they are afraid. Thalvin studied the document. It was so different from everything the Assembly stood for. But as he read, he found himself nodding. This was how the Assembly should have been from the beginning, before fear and control became its foundation. Who would lead such a coalition? He asked, a council elected by member species. Each world gets a vote, regardless of size or military power. Decisions would require majority support, and any species could leave whenever they wished. That sounds like it would be slow and inefficient, perhaps Guan admitted. But it would also be fair, and fairness matters. We have learned that people will fight harder for a system they believe in than for a system that oppresses them. Thalvin was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. What do you need from me? Your support. Your people's knowledge. The Thalvari have governed for thousands of years. You understand logistics, diplomacy, administration. We need that expertise, but without the domination. Help us build something better. It was humiliating. The humans were asking him to join their new order, not the other way around. But Thalvin was old and tired, and he had seen enough death. If this was the path forward, perhaps it was time to try something new. I will need to discuss this with my people, but I believe we could come to an arrangement. 1 month later, representatives from 73 species gathered on Earth for the founding summit of the Free Species Coalition. It was held in Geneva, in the same building where humanity had decided to refuse the Assembly's tribute. Now that building would host the birth of something new. Prime Minister Min Ho Kong had been elected as the first chairman of the Coalition Council, a position he had not wanted but could not refuse. He stood at the podium, looking out at the gathered aliens. Some were former Assembly members. Others were species that had been subjugated for millennia. All of them were here by choice. Friends, Minho began. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, not as rulers and subjects, but as equals. The old system is gone. It will not return. What we build here today will determine the future of every species in this galaxy. He presented the Coalition Charter, the document that Jiwan and her team had spent months crafting with input from dozens of species. It established clear rules for membership, trade, defense, and dispute resolution. Most importantly, it enshrined the principle that no species had the right to dominate another. The vote was unanimous. The Free Species Coalition was born Yuna Lee, now serving as the coalition's economic coordinator, immediately began working with representatives from each species to establish fair trade agreements. No more tribute. Instead, worlds would trade based on mutual benefit and negotiated prices. It was more complicated than the old system, but it was also more just. Admiral Hajin Choi accepted the position of Supreme Commander of Coalition Defense Forces. His task was to build a military that could protect member worlds without becoming a tool of oppression. He established strict rules of engagement and created a command structure where officers from any species could rise based on merit, not political connections. The former assembly species struggled with the transition. They had been in power for so long that equality felt like oppression, but slowly they began to adapt. The Thelvar proved especially valuable, their administrative expertise helping to organize the coalition's bureaucracy. Thelvan himself became an advisor, using his knowledge to help avoid the mistakes that had doomed the assembly. Not everyone accepted the new order peacefully. A faction of Vorn hardliners attempted to restart the old system, gathering a fleet of loyalist ships and demanding that tribute be restored. They attacked a coalition supply convoy, expecting other assembly loyalists to join them instead. They faced a combined fleet from 5 different species, including reformed Vorn, who believed in the coalition's principles. The battle was brief. The hardliners surrendered when they realized no one was coming to help them. They had thought they were defending tradition. Instead, they were the last gasp of a dying era. Commodore Sungri Nam, now an admiral in the coalition forces, oversaw the integration of different species' military doctrines. He worked with Vorn commanders to combine their firepower with human tactics, the Pelthian stealth technology with Thulvari shield systems. The coalition military became stronger than the old assembly forces had ever been, precisely because it drew on the strengths of all its members. Engineer Hiron Chin led a team developing new ship designs that incorporated technology from multiple species. Human creativity, Thulvari stability, Vrin innovation. The ships they produced were faster and more efficient than anything that had come before. Bowman, you established the Coalition Historical Archive, a project dedicated to preserving the true history of every member species. No more propaganda. No more lies about past conquests. Just honest accounting of both achievements and mistakes. Many species found it painful to confront their real histories, but also liberating. 1 year after the founding summit, Guan Park stood on the observation deck of the Coalition's new headquarters station. Watching ships from dozens of worlds come and go, Minho Kong joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered her one. "Do you think it will last?" Guan asked. Minho sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "Nothing lasts forever. But I think we have built something worth maintaining. And more importantly, we have changed how people think." A year ago, most species believed they had to choose between dominating others or being dominated. Now they know there is a third option. Cooperation between equals? Exactly. That idea is more powerful than any weapon. It will spread to species we have not even met yet. The galaxy is a different place now, and we help make it that way. A new transmission came through. A species from beyond Coalition space, one that had never had contact with the Assembly, was asking to join. They had heard about the new order and wanted to be part of it. G1 smiled. "We should probably answer that." In a moment, Minho said, "I want to appreciate this. There was a time when I thought we might all die fighting the Assembly. There was a time when the future looked very dark. But we survived. We won. Not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we refused to accept that injustice was inevitable." He was right. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had not replaced one empire with another. They had simply asked a question that no one else had dared to ask. Why should we pay for the privilege of existing? And when the answer was unsatisfactory, they had said no. That single word had changed everything. Governor Yunjihan sent a message from New Busan. The colony was thriving now, building new schools and hospitals with resources that would have gone to tribute. Children were growing up free, never knowing the fear their parents had lived with. She wanted to thank the council for making that possible. Daeho Kim reported that Coalition intelligence had detected no major threats. The former Assembly loyalists had either joined the Coalition or retreated to isolated systems where they posed no danger. Peace was not guaranteed, but it was possible. Captain Junho Park, who had served as weapons officer on the Indomitable during the Battle of New Busan. Now commanded his own ship in the Coalition fleet.